So I've always wanted to have a smart home. The other day I found out from one of my colleagues that it's actually pretty easy and cheap to start getting into making your home smart. In this video, I'll show you probably one of the basic smart home implementations everyone starts with. That is automating your light switches. Let's get into it. This is SKMDK, back with another video. So let's see how I made my light switches smart. So I've got here a 3-gang or 3-channel smart switch. Let's see how it looks in the box. I must say it looks pretty, and I've actually got the white color. You can also see it has a Wi-Fi logo in front to indicate that it works with Wi-Fi. Now it's also important to note that this switch requires a neutral wire. So you'll need to first ensure that there's a neutral line to your switch box. Otherwise it won't work, as it's needed to keep the Wi-Fi module up. There are 2 screws at the back to secure it to your wall. There's also a manual on how to set it up. But anyway, the point of this video is to show you how to test it. Let's start hooking it up. First thing first, probably a very important step. First, ensure that you have switched off your power in your house. At the very least, your light switch in your main electrical box. This is to avoid shocking yourself with electricity, as this is around 240 volts, so it can be very dangerous. So be very careful. So for what we'll need, I got a combination plier, a multimeter mainly to check before we start working that indeed there's no power, a Phillips screwdriver, a tape, some safety gloves, then I got a knife in case I'll need to cut off some of the wires. Side note, don't be like me, rather get the proper tool for this, which is a crimping tool. Now that we have the power off, let us take off the dumb old switch. I use a flat screwdriver to take it off. Yours might be different, but the whole point is to open it up and remove it from the switch box. Struggled with mine a bit, but it eventually popped out. Now let's take off the switch by unscrewing the 2 screws. Once loose, we pull the switch gently towards us. We use a multimeter to then check to see if there's no electricity currently flowing through. Since we are not yet sure of this, let us get our safety gloves as we check, so if there's an odd chance that there is power, we don't get shocked. As you can see, there's no power as the measured voltage is 0. Now let's look at the wires. There are 2 red ones on my side that are entangled. These are the live or hot wires which receive electricity from the main. Then the top one is the load wire that actually sends the power to your light bulb to switch it on. Then, as I mentioned, we would also need a neutral wire. Usually this would be black, as in my case, and when not used they would tie them up together, though I do advise that maybe you try to check with your electrician who did the wiring in your house, just to confirm, as I did too, to check which one is which wire, which one is the load, which one is the live, which one is the neutral. We will need to untangle these neutral wires, as mentioned, that our smart switch needs to stay on and connected to our Wi-Fi. Mine were connected together using a ferrule connector, so we'll need to cut it off first. Let's take off the live wire and load wires out of the old switch. It's also a good idea to take a picture of the current connections in your switch box. In case you mess up anything, you can also take it back. You can always take it back to how it was before. We use a combination plier, the side which can cut off the ferrule. I then use my knife to take off part of the covering on the wires. As I said again, Don't be like me. Get the right tool for this. I got an extra black cable to actually use to connect the neutral wire to the smart switch. Sort of like extend the neutral wire. Then I'll use a new ferrule connector to connect the neutral wires together again in this way. Then I used a combination plier to squeeze the ferrule. Again, there are specific tools for this, so don't be like me and rather get a proper tool. As you can see here, I struggle a bit. And the right tool there would be a crimping tool. And once squeezed in, use the tape to insulate the section of the ferrule connector. You can see how the connection is now well insulated. Let's now take off the smart switch out of its packaging. Then at the back, the places for your neutral, live and load wires are marked. We start with the neutral wire. We'll need to take off the front cover of the smart switch. We'll need the flat screwdriver for this. Just insert on the hole below and give it a gentle push upwards, then it will pop open. We use a Phillips screwdriver to take off the screws for the wires. We screw in the neutral wire, then the live wire, and then lastly the load wire. I only have one light from this switch box, so I can only screw in the top button. I will use the other buttons for other automations, so that's why I got a 3-gang even though I actually only control one light. We can now safely put back the switch into the switch box. We then screw it in. I'm a bit unlucky on my side that the new switch is a bit thinner, so it leaves a slight opening on the side. We'll need to think of how I'm gonna deal with that. Once you have securely put it against the wall, it is time to pair it with your Smart Life app. I'm using a Galaxy Z Fold 2. You will need to have the switch in pairing mode, that is, the light blinking fast. If this is not the case, you can just press and hold all the 3 buttons, then they'll go off and then on again. Now when they go on again, the Wi-Fi logo will start blinking fast, meaning it's on pairing mode. Now that we show that it's blinking fast, you can now enter your Wi-Fi details and then just proceed. Now it will try to connect your switch to your Wi-Fi, and then once connected, you can now control it. Now let's give it a moment a bit. Right? Now see, it's now connected. I can now switch on the lights by pressing on the different switches, and then the light does switch off. I can even play around and switch on the ones that are actually not connected to the light, and they do still switch on. So that was it on how to actually install the smart switch, and you can see that it's now working, and actually you can actually control the lights even when we're at home with our phone. But I've also actually now hooked them up with Home Assistant, and now I'll show you 2 quick automations that I actually use for this, that I made for this lights on Home Assistant using Node-RED. One that controls that my lights will automatically switch off when the sun rises and switch off when the sun sets. And then another one which I actually use it to help me with waking up to study in the morning, which will switch on the light if it now notices that I'm up by a sensor on my phone that measures whether I'm sleeping or not. And immediately after it sees that I'm not sleeping, then it will switch on the light. Now enough about talking, let's see how we actually do it in Node-RED. And then you can now play around with your automations. Now obviously you can make a whole lot of automations with this. You can choose to switch on one light when another one switches on, and switch on lights on motion if you have motion sensors. But yeah, I'll just show you these 2 ones. Let's get into it. So I'm logged into my Home Assistant instance, and then we will go to Node-RED to show you where I've built the automation. Let's just wait for it to load. So as I said, I have 2 automations. The first one will switch off the lights when the sun rises, and then switch on the lights automatically when the sun sets, right? So the first part, I just use an event state node. So this node, sun entity, ID. I think this entity should definitely be on everyone's Home Assistant installation. So then it's just sun.sun. And then I said if the state is below the horizon for 0 minutes, right? So that's, it should do something. And then obviously the false part of that, if it's above the horizon, right? So I said if it's below the horizon, right? So if the state is true, right? Switch on the light. So meaning that go switch on my main bedroom light, my office light, and my sister's room light. And then in here, I just used a call service node. So this node, and then I'll show you on the other side what I sort of selected. I just call it switch on lights, and the Home Assistant will always be selected. Then the domain is a switch. Then I said turn on, and then I just listed all the lights that I want to be switched on when the state is true, meaning when the sun sets or below the horizon. So, and you can sort of separate them by a comma. So if I wanted to add another one, I'll just put a comma at the end and then get another switch, right? So if you type switch, it will now show all the switch sort of entities you have, right? Then obviously the other part is when it's false. So meaning when the sun rises, I want you to switch off the lights. And basically the same thing again, I just say switch off. Yeah, I created a group, right? I'll show you how to actually create a group of all the indoor lights. The reason why I didn't select the same group on the other side is because I didn't want to always switch on the bathroom lights when the sun sets. I want to rather switch those ones manually myself, right? But I want them to be switched off to save electricity in the morning, right? So I put it in the group. So I'll show you how to create a group. So you can go to your file editor or any sort of VS Code or file editor, any way you can like sort of write your YAML code. And then you just want to select groups, right? Groups.yaml. If you don't have it, you can just click on new and then create groups.yaml, right? You just have to type groups.yaml, right? But I already have it, obviously, right? And then you will see that in there, you first call what the name of the group, right? And obviously you need to sort of indent twice here because I'll actually include this in my configuration.yaml file. So I'll have to indent it twice, 2 spaces in there, right, for it to be read correctly. And then it says all indoor lights, and then just the name, I just call it indoor lights again, just the friendly name, and then all the entities that I want to include in that group called indoor lights. So it's my main bedroom light, my other switch, my bedroom light, which is actually my bathroom light, and my office light, and my sister's bedroom light, right? So going back into Node-RED, I just wait for it to load. All right, into lights again, I'll show you the other automation. Now, the other automation is really on, as I said, it's to help me to wake up in the morning when I have to study, because usually I'll wake up easily once the light hits my face. So I've created an automation based on the fact that I used one of the entities that come with when you install the Home Assistant app on your Android or iPhone device. I think on the Android, I don't know about the iPhone, I only use Android, but on the Android device, you can create and you can switch on the sensor that's called Sleep Confidence. And then I first switched it on and then sort of monitored on my history to see how it looks when I'm at sleep. And so for example, I'll look for it here, Sleep Confidence, right? And you can see here, I will sort of look for a space where I know I'll definitely be sleeping. So if I say around 12 o'clock, right, in here, around this sort of time, I know that I started falling asleep somewhere, right, 11:21. And you can see that the sleep confidence is around, it's actually above 50. And that's actually how I created my own sensor that senses if I'm sleeping. So I just sort of monitored what sleep confidence that is sent to Home Assistant so that I can know that means that I'm now sleeping, right? I can now also show you how I've actually created that sensor. and you will have to do something similar. Actually, I forgot to show you how to actually include it, but to include the groups in your configuration.yaml file. But we'll now see it here when I go into the sensor. So in the sensor, I just created a sensor that is called sleep state, right? So again, you'll need to indent it because you're going to include it, indent it twice. You're going to include it into your configuration.yaml file, and it's a platform template. And then I said sensors, call it sleep state, and then the state is based on the value of this template. And then it says if the state, it's actually, I first also created a sensor for midnight. I'll also show you that one. If it's on and also the sleep confidence above 50%, then I want you to say that, change the sensor to say that I'm sleeping, else say that I'm awake, right? Then I'll now also show you the binary sensor for the midnight side. Where is it? This binary sensor, and you'll see here, this is the name of the sensor, midnight. So this is where I've created. Again, you need to indent twice because you're going to include in your configuration.yaml. So this is a platform, and then this is time of the day, or TOD. You'll have to type it this way. So because it's an integration within Home Assistant, and then you give it the name. I said midnight, and then I said start the sensor after 12 midnight. So that's the time, and then switch it off at sunrise. So basically, once it's 12 midnight, the sensor will say it's midnight, will switch on. And then once it hits sunrise, depending on the day, the time, well, depending on the day when, depending on the time when the sun will rise, it will then switch off, right? Then obviously, as I said, I'll have to show you how I actually then now included this. So I just said group, right? Semicolon, and I said include groups.yaml so that it can actually work and use it. And then also, so I've done that for all the other sort of YAML codes that I want to sort of pull into here. And then also for the binary sensor, I did that, and also for the sensor. So you'll need this binary sensor, you'll need it for that midnight sensor that I showed you. The sensor here, you'll need it for the sleep state sensor that I showed you, and the group, you'll need it to use that group all indoor lights, or where I've created a group of my lights so that I can switch them all at once, right? So let's go back to Node-RED to see the automation, right? Again, go to lights, then, right? So yeah, as I said, I've used that sensor that I've created, sensor.sleepState, and I said if the sensor says awake, right? And then obviously 5 seconds, right? Because I also wanted to not just switch on the lights immediately if the sleep confidence drops over 50. I wanted to sort of wait a bit to make sure that I'm a bit awake. I mean, I can play around with this, but I just selected 5 seconds. And the other one is sleeping, right? So the opposite is sleeping. So if it says I'm awake, if the state is true, and then I wanted to first check if the midnight sensor is on, meaning that it's midnight, so between 12 and sunrise. Then I want to check if indeed the bathroom light is off. So right, so I've again, so in here I actually used current state node, which is this one, which will only flow through if the state is true, right? So that's what I'm using here to first check if it's midnight, so that if it's not midnight, actually do not switch on the light, right? So obviously I only wanted to switch on if it's midnight or during the midnight period, right? And then check if the bathroom is off again. So this is also a current state node that again checks if the bathroom is off. So if it finds that it's off, the state is true. So I just put in that node in here. Then I want you to turn on the bathroom lights. Again, this is a call service node again, as I showed you this node. And then I just then said, use the switch domain, turn on, and then this is my entity name or ID for my bathroom light, right? And then obviously there's also, so that is for switching it on. And obviously when I do sort of wake up and if I do fall asleep again, so you also use, if I want to go to the toilet in the midnight. So if I now go back to sleep, I want it to also switch off again. So this is where the sensor now says if the sleep state is actually sleeping, which is the false part of this. So if the state is false, first check that I'm out of bed. Now I also created an input boolean here where I call it sleep mode, and I'll just show you how to actually create it. So you just need to go down to your settings, go down to helpers, and then just say add helper, and then I created a toggle. Then you name it, and then you can give it an icon. So I'll show you this one that I use for the out of bed. So there, I call it out of bed. I selected the MDI sleep icon, and then that's the name of the entity, right? Which is the one I'm using in Node-RED. So if you go back to Node-RED, you'll see. So that I again use the current state node, and this was basically to check that. So sometimes I would actually wake up before my midnight sort of time, so my sensor will still be saying on, and then I would have a problem of my automation then switching off the bathroom light when I'm showering. So now I created an input boolean which I say out of bed, and this I manually control in my Lovelace. So if you go back to the Lovelace, you'll see that I have it here. See, out of bed, I just switch it on automatically, and then it will so that it can sort of cut the automation. It doesn't switch off the lights while I'm showering, right? So it says check if I'm out of bed, right? It will check that, finds okay, I'm out of bed, and then again there's a midnight check that I want you to only run this automation during the midnight time, because obviously on the day it doesn't matter. I don't really want my lights on or off, right? I actually want my lights off. I don't want to sort of play around with the automation. Then I have again a current state node that checks if the bathroom is on. So before you try to switch it off, just check if it's on. And then I have a call service node that now says turn off, that switches off the bathroom light. So yeah, that was it. And then yeah, I hope you sort of learned a bit. I'm a Node-RED. I enjoy using Node-RED, but you can actually create all these automations using the automation sort of helper in Home Assistant, but I prefer using Node-RED. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it, and cheers.